one of the things that we see, again, many rising stars in business do, you're young, you're happy that you have great ideas and you want to get all the ideas out at the same time. We say no, because this is what happened. The research is showing that many businesses fail because they do not have adequate or the right human resources to move the vision forward, at least at the start of your business. You don't have the human resources. Research has showed us you don't have the technical resources.
Jeez.
And again, you don't have the capital resources. But guess what?
Wait, hold on. I have to stop you. Yeah, I wanted to say it again. I wanted to repeat what you just said again.
Yeah, many businesses, they don't have adequate human resources to move the vision forward, especially rising star in business. You're now starting, you have a great idea, you need human resources to move the vision forward. And very often you don't have it. You don't have the technical resources and you don't have the capital resources.
Hello and welcome to today's podcast. On today's podcast, I have Gary Thompson with us, and he is the founder and CEO of Global Capital Inc. And he's going to share his insights today on marketing and finance. Gary, it's a pleasure to have you here. I would love to start out I want you to introduce yourself. Tell our listeners a little bit about you and how you started.
All right, Cassie, I must say, first of all, it gives me so much a pleasure to be here with you. And I want to acknowledge the great work that you're doing in terms of your platform of creating, visibility for persons and like myself. I'm always happy to be here to support. A little bit about me, they say a Toastmaster wear many hats, and sometimes I feel I'm very much like that Toastmaster. About me, I am a consultant. I work a lot with businesses in terms of helping them to understand how to build a strong brand. After years of working with businesses and helping them with building their brand image, whether it be corporate or personal brand, I recognize that many of those entities, they had a challenge, and one of the challenges that they were struggling to access capital to move their vision forward. So after working with businesses for many years and seeing where they're at, we have decided now to build out a portfolio that really helps any business in the US across 50 states to access various type of financial instruments to move their businesses forward. We'll talk about that later on. A little bit more about me. I have written multiple books. I have just released 11 volume of my last book, which is titled Master the Sales Communication Process. Now, one of the reasons that we have written that book is largely based on the fact that we have seen that, yes, businesses have dreams and hopes and aspiration, and yes, we may help them to access capital. But if you don't understand the market in which you're interfacing with, you can have the capital and still fail. So what the books does, the 11 volume does, it really helps you to understand some of the best practices starting and scaling in your businesses. And I'll be happy to discuss some of what is in the book as we go into today's program. I'm a humanitarian, and as I said, I can go on and on. Toastmasters wear many hats.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And I love how you gave the introduction. And I love when you spoke about, people could have access to capital and not know how to use it, and hence the business fails. I want to touch on that first. You have a lot of insight, obviously, into that aspect of it. Could you tell us a little bit about what you found has hindered entrepreneurs in that aspect? Like they have the capital and they fail. Like how? Why? What are they not doing?
Starting a business should never be an emotional decision. And what you find happen a lot, there are many rising stars in business. They come up with great ideas, but those ideas are not stress tests. And if the ideas are not stress tests, it means that you are making an emotional decision in terms of getting into business. Well, making an emotional decision can cause you stress. It can cause you sleepless nights. and it can cost you a lot of money. Now, let me just explain a little bit as to what I mean by stress testing your business. You want to ensure that you have market intelligence in starting a business. In other words, you want to ensure that the decision that you're making to start a business makes sense. But how do you know if it makes sense? By doing the stress test, it helps you to make better, smarter, wiser business decisions. One of the things that we look at in terms of stress testing your business idea is one, to establish brand relevance. All right. You want to be certain that your value offer, we call it your MVO, your minimum viable offer, your most viable offer. You want to be certain that it is relevant to the ideal client. But how do you know that? Emotional decision is not going to get you there. Speculation is not going to get you there. You need to ensure that you are collecting the right information. You need to be certain that you're analyzing the right information. You're leveraging the right information, and you're able to mitigate it in such a way to help you to make an informed decision as to if it is relevant. And the kind of information that I'm talking about that you need to collect is information about the ideal client. You need to invest time, talent, and resources to understand the ideal client so as to ensure that your value offer is relevant to their needs. But in terms of stress testing, we go deeper than that, because you may be able to stress test the need of a group of people, but is that helping you to understand the viability of the market? Part of your stress test, you want to know that the market is viable. How do you know if the market is viable? You need to spend time again assessing the size of the market, and based on understanding your market size, market gaps, you are at a better place in terms of making an informed and educated decision that this market is viable. Perhaps an example might be that you have researched the market and you see that, hey, the market, we have 5 million or 10 million persons that have a specific need that is not met. Or if it's met, it's not met to the full extent, so you have gaps. The research tells you that at any given one time, you have a ready-made audience that is consuming, let us say, pharmaceutical products on a regular basis. So based on market size and market demand, you can now make an informed decision in terms of the viability of that market. But of course, the viability is not the only thing that you want to look at.
Right.
Because the market may be viable, but then the market, you want to ask yourself if your value offer, if it is reaching an urgent and immediate need. It may be viable, but then as a rising star in business, you want almost instant cash flow. So the next thing that you need to look for is urgency and immediacy, the utilization of whatever products and services you are offering. Because if the demand pull is not urgent, guess what? I can delay my purchase for a day or two, a week, 2 months, 3 months. What if I delay my purchase for 6 months and you're dependent on cash flow? You didn't stress test if you're reaching an urgent need or an immediate need. So sometimes you get into business and you struggle to cash flow because you have all of these variables that are playing out and you did not know this. Let's go to, I'm almost finished here. The next concept that you need to understand when we stress testing is market access. Because one of the strangest things that we see is that, as a rising star in business, you have so many great ideas. And because you didn't take the time to really understand who is your ideal client, you don't know if you have access to them. And what I would say to people is that if you're building a brand and you don't know the ideal client, is it really a brand? All right. So to understand your ideal client, you need to pause a bit and you need to ask yourself, what are those characteristics of the ideal client that you are targeting, that you want to reach? And it is by understanding that is what sets you up to understand, first of all, who is the ideal client? Secondly, is how to access the ideal client and position your products and services in front of them. Because ever so often, we have businesses that are saying that, hey, I'm targeting everybody. And one of the things that I would say, it's impossible to target everybody with your product. Even in terms of, you might say soap, everybody has to use soap. But, everybody has to use soap, but it's not everyone is going to use the same brand of soap. Some person may have sensitive skin, so they may not use certain soap that is going to irritate the skin. They might want to use an organic soap. So they have so many variables that you need to pause and think about when you are building a brand and when you want to cash flow. And when you disregard some of these things, it really undermines the potential of that business and to be successful. The last one that I want to make here in terms of the stress test is what we talk about in terms of the client must have the ability and the willingness to pay for your product. Because let me give you a scenario. You might be providing quality cozy housing. And you might want to say that, hey, everybody needs, a luxury apartment. You build your luxury apartment in the wrong area. First of all, the people that are willing to rent in your community, the community that you would have built in, guess what? They don't have the disposable income to rent at the sum that you are calling. They may have a demand for your products and services, but then they don't have the disposable income. And in cases, even when they have the disposable income, they don't have the willingness to pay for your products and services. So when we talk about stress testing, is all of these things must match up to ensure that you are not making that emotional decision, but you have all the information that is influencing the business decision that you're making. I know that's a long answer, but
listen.
that's a topic.
I appreciate it. Here's the thing. When you have depth and breadth of knowledge, condensing it is sometimes very difficult. And I'm glad you didn't condense it. Why? Because I think that our listeners need to hear exactly what you just said. They need to understand it's not one thing, it's several variables when starting a business, because that's really important. And what you said, everybody has an idea, but it's an emotional, they sometimes go off emotional, make emotional decisions instead of actually looking at the analytics. Like, what is it telling me? Is the market ready for my product and service? Do they have the money to purchase what I'm selling? And I like that you went into all of that. And let me ask, where did that knowledge for you come from? Did you have a mentor? Did you learn by school? Did you learn trial and error?
Yes, I had a lot of school, and I did international studies via Cambridge. I did additional international studies via Rice University, and study at American University of Peace Studies. I also have a few years under my belt in terms of lecturing and marketing, and many, many years practicing my craft as a consultant. So while a lot of information would have come from academic studies, a lot of information also came from practical, experience and interfacing with the market. And I think after years of experience of being in the field, you start to recognize that there are some gaps, because you may have an academic textbook. The academic textbook may tell you a whole lot, but then you find that sometimes there's a disconnect with what is being said academically and what has to be done in the real world of doing business. There's sometimes that disconnect. So being in the field, being practically involved with nurturing the development and growth of businesses, you're literally seeing some of the gaps, some of the weaknesses. And so that provides me with an opportunity to craft my niche out in the market by focusing on things that I see that many other scholars are not necessarily focusing on.
Oh, I like that. I like that. So you're able to identify the gaps and be able to be the solution for those businesses. Awesome. Awesome. Let me ask you, how did writing the books, or how is it helping you with branding and marketing? How is it helping you to position yourself by, writing all those books?
What I want to say, as you asked that question, I can distinctly remember, this is about 8 years ago. I was traveling, and when you have to go through the American immigration systems, they're very, they can scrutinize you. So at one time, I had I think it's 2 suitcases, but one suitcase was clothing and all the stuff, and the other case in it had just books. So the guy said, these things are your things. I said, yes, everything here is mine. You packed it? I said, no, my wife packed it. They said, okay. So he went into the first one, tumbled, everything was good. The second one, as he was about to go in it, he said, you are an author. You are an author. So he stopped all the investigation. He's locked the bag back. He said, man, you go and you have fun, right? So that was... that was the first benefit of it. I could recall it was in that same travel, I went to do some work with a pastor, and I was then introduced to an activist, a human rights activist, and I gave her one of my books. And the next day I got a call, and the call is from a number that I don't know. And she says, Gary, hi, this is Linda. I said, Linda? She said, yes, you gave me the book yesterday. We met with Pastor so-and-so. I said, hi, Linda, great to talk with you. So she said, I read your book and I'm so impressed with your book. And I want you to come to Manhattan, all right? I have some work that we are doing in Manhattan, and I need you to come and make a presentation. So writing the book, I believe, has really, bring down some barriers and open a whole lot of doors. And for me, I think one of the joy of writing books, it really helps to establish you as an authority on the subject matter. For me, I've largely written books. Yes, you want all the accolades and everything that comes with it, but for me, it's having that book that your students can use as a reference reference point to get the information, to study the information, to retain the information. And so you have the book backing you up in the classroom, and you also have you to work with the students to help them to implement. But I would advise anyone, having a book to me is like that new business card, because you want to make an impression on someone. Yeah, a business card is going to help them to understand your name, your position, and some details about what the business is doing. But then when you present a book to them, it really helps them to have that deeper understanding as to what your mindset really is and how you can really help their businesses to move forward based on what you're actually saying in that book.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And do you currently help people, your clients, to write?
Part of what we do, we have the bestseller portal, and what the bestseller portal does, it really helps persons who might be professional who is not an author. It is built out to give them the support to have their books done. And once that is done, we have an ecosystem where we help in the marketing and public relation of that. That side of what we do, we still need to do a lot of work behind it in terms of marketing. And but that is something that we're going to be emphasizing a whole lot because of the importance of having that book behind your name. I believe it can really help businesses, leaders, influencers to attain, that position of strength and to be that authoritative figure, and when they have that book. So that we plan to do a lot more work where that is concerned.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're able to have that portal where businesses can go and they can write their book. They can let people know what they know, because I feel like there are so many people out there that really don't have the know-how. They don't have the know-how, but they're actually they're marketing and getting out there faster than the people that do have the know-how.
Yeah, you're right. There's so many moving parts to position a business to be successful. I know I've said a lot earlier on, but when it comes to the elements of branding and marketing, in the book, the last book I've written, we have outlined this. To make a brand successful, among everything else that I would have said, you want to do the stress test. Once you would have gone through that stress test and you are certain now that it makes sense to do business, you still have to break barriers. You have to break through the know, like, and trust. Doing that sometimes is not the easiest thing. All right.
Not at all.
It's not. There may be some shortcuts. There may be some ways and hacks to fast track the growth curve, and we can talk about that a little. But it costs you a whole lot of money to do it. And just let me put a face to what I'm saying. To break through that know, like, and trust that we often talk about, if your business is not known, potential client don't have a reason to like you. And people buy from who they like. People invest with who they like. And if they don't like you, they don't have a good reason to trust you. So what's going to happen with the business? As we talk about building your brand the right way, we put a lot of emphasis on creating an ecosystem where you have brand leaders that are nurturing the healthy relationships with the right people. Business is a relationship sport. Let's call it that. Mm-hmm. If you don't have relationship with your clients, your vision is going to be compromised. If you don't have relationship with critical stakeholders, that vision can be compromised. Critical stakeholders can be influencers, could be bankers, could be social media influencers. It's a relationship game. So you want to really ensure that you get this right. If you don't have the skill set to go out there and, mix and mingle, build out that type of relationship, you need to ensure that someone at your strategic and tactical team, they have that ability. So that's ground zero. Let's move on here now. You want to be visible. And when we talk about visibility, there's an ecosystem that you need to understand, because there are multiple approaches that you can use to position your brand to be visible. One, you can use mass media. And when we talk of mass media, we're talking about how you're using radio, how you're using television, and how you're using the print media to get your content out. You want visibility. So these are platforms that you need to be aware of. The challenge with using traditional media, however, they don't have the kind of matrix for you to measure the effectiveness of your placement.
Right.
One of the things that we talk about in advertising is what we call the DASHMAR, which is defining advertising goal for measure advertising results, meaning that you want to measure everything that you're doing. You want to know that it makes sense. If I'm going to be putting $1 million into radio, television, and newspaper, at the end of the day, I want to know that I at least stand a good chance of generating $10 million back from it, because it's going to give me the visibility that I need. So you need to understand the platform in which you're marketing in, and you find something. You may have money, you can run a campaign, but do you have the expertise on your side that is really helping you to understand the effectiveness and the effective use of the media? In my last book, I spoke about that. The series of books that we have written, we spoke about that. From the mass media, you now have social media. How well you're using social media. Well, across social media platforms, you tend to have more of the matrix. It's like I can go to platforms like YouTube and I can quantify how many persons looked at the program. I can quantify if they are male or female. I can predetermine their age group. I can predetermine which part of the world they are viewing the content from. So I have all of these metrics that's really helping me to, make a better business decision and better evaluate if my investment dollar makes a whole lot of sense. These are things that you need to understand, because if you don't understand what we call the platforms to position the brand to be visible, you could be spending a lot of money and not necessarily getting the return, because you and your team perhaps don't have the eyesight or foresight to recognize it is so important to pause a bit and really understand the ecosystem that you're using to build your visibility. There are multiple social media platforms. It's going to take me a long time to go through all of them. Yeah. So today you have also what is known as the metaverse, and you find a lot of young people today are gravitating to the metaverse. Depending on where you are in the world, you may or may not know about the metaverse. Now, if you're a rising star in business and you want to do global business and you don't understand the metaverse, the possibility exists that when you're targeting young people, many young people are shifting their attention over to these new and modern innovations that are taking place. If you are not keeping abreast of those trends, you're going to lose connection with the ideal client. So understanding how the metaverse is being built out and how you can position your brand there for visibility is important in the whole equation of the practical steps that you're taking to position your brand to be know, like, and trust. So there's so many moving parts. The last concept that I want to talk about here, when we look at mass media, we look at social media, we look at the metaverse. None of these platforms are independent platforms, meaning that you don't own it. At the end of the day, you want to focus on independent communication channel. Why do I say independent? Because it's independent, it's yours, and you want to be able to create a system where you're pulling persons from mass media, from social media, from the metaverse into your independent communication channel, where they're going there. That's your lead magnet. That's your funnel, because you now have direct contact with them. So let us suppose that something goes wrong with mass media or social media or the metaverse. If something collapsed now, something happened there, you don't have access to your community. What do you do?
I have to stop you there. Because now that you bring that up, that is what a lot of people are facing right now, even with this TikTok ban. Because with this ban now, they had a lot of their followers and communication on the platform itself, and a lot of them never moved their content. They didn't move their audience from there. If you're speaking to those people directly now, what would you say to them?
In management, we also talk about leadership, but we talk about a particular form of leadership, which we call proactive leadership. And you find it very often that many, young rising stars, they tend to be reactive. In business, you really cannot afford to be reactive when hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions, and perhaps billions of dollars are, involved with this. So let me just explain what proactive leaders help you to understand. There are three major things to learn from the proactive leaders ecosystem. One, you think ahead. You don't wait until a situation happens and then you start reacting to it. You train the mind to think think ahead. And anyone with experience in business, they will be able to tell you some of the key things in business that you should be thinking ahead about. And one of those things that you should be thinking ahead about is, how do I build out my platform to be independent and sustainable in spite of all the social media, the mass media, and all of those different platforms. So you think ahead, you have to think through these things. So it's thinking ahead, it's seeing beyond problems, and being able to take informed action to achieve the desired end result. In the in a short sentence, just let me say this to answer your question in the shortest way. Start thinking about independent communication channel. You want to build your independent platforms where, if even it's just having your email list, all right, where in the event that something happens, you still have access to your ideal client. That's going to save you a whole lot of stress and perhaps sleepless nights.
And which book can they go to find the most information about proactive management?
They can go to the bestsellerportal.org. And once you go to product on your left-hand side, you will see books. Just click on the books and it will come up. There's 11 volumes of those books that we have there. Now, the very first book helps you to understand some of the foundational knowledge that you should have in starting a business. And with your permission, can I share a little bit on that?
Yes, please.
Just before we come to the book the volume of the book that they're going to get marketed and branded on, I want to talk a little bit about volume 1. One of the things that we see, again, many rising stars in business do. You know, you're young, you're happy that you have great ideas and you want to get all the ideas out at the same time. We say no, because this is what happened. The research is showing that many businesses fail because they do not have adequate or the right human resources to move the vision forward, at least at the start of your business. You don't have the human resources. Research has showed us you don't have the technical resources.
Jeez.
And again, you don't have the capital resources. But guess what?
Wait, hold on. I have to stop you. Yeah, I want you to say it again. I want you to repeat what you just said again.
Yeah, many businesses, they don't have adequate human resources to move the vision forward, especially rising star in business. You're now starting, you have a great idea, you know, you need human resources to move the vision forward. And very often you don't have it. You don't have the technical resources and you don't have the capital resources. But guess what? Because you're excited about your vision, about your ideas, about doing business, you have multiple ideas that you're playing around with at the same time. And guess what? You want to go to market with all of them at the same time. Guess what happened? Because you're going to market with multiple value offers at the same time with limited human resources, limited technical resources, and limited capital resources, that in itself sets up the whole stage to cancel out any. So in the first book, we talk about what we call mastering your MVO. What that means, it means that you want to put yourself in that position of strength where you could master what we call the 1 in 10 factors of brand selection. Select one. As you learn about the MVO, it means 3 things. It means go to market with your minimum viable offer. That might be the lowest hanging fruit that you're going to market with. You're going with the lowest hanging fruit because it might be low cost. You might be able to mass produce, reach more people, and bring it to the point of cash conversion very early. So you go to market with just one, the minimum viable offer. The other option that you have when you look at the MVO, instead of going with the minimum viable offer, you can now decide to go with the most viable offer. The most viable offer now means that you're going to market with a premium brand product, which means you're not targeting the average person, you're targeting high net worth individual. Now, again, if even you're going to be putting human, technical, and capital resources to that, put it to the one. But what we see happening is that most rising star, they're not going with the minimum viable, they're not going with the most viable, they're going with the maximum viable offers, and that undermines the whole process. So the book at a very first chapter, the volume 1, we do this deep dive into this to really help them to understand there's a right and wrong way in which you start and scale a business, particularly so when you don't have deep pockets.
Listen, this is the book that most every entrepreneur should be holding, right, when they're starting their business, because this already sets you up for failure, because you don't know what you don't know. And when you're just leading with emotions and a good idea, you can quickly go down the wrong path because you really don't know what you don't know?
So you're right. So the first volume really do a deep dive into that, and then it starts to get you prepared to understand the mindset of what we call the sales communication professional, the SCP. One of the mistakes that we see many rising stars in business do also, you start a business and you don't have a sales communication professional on your side. You don't, and we coined this SCP because the SCP is more than a salesperson. The SCP is more than somebody that is doing marketing. The SCP, the sales communication professional, they are the people that are going to help you to collect the right information about your market. They're going to help you to go through that stress test, and they're going to be the people that's going to help you to build out your visibility game plan. One of the most important departments that every business needs, particularly so at the start and throughout the whole business life cycle, is marketing, is sales, is public relation. And you find that when you work with so many rising stars in business, guess what? They don't have a sales department. The other trap that we see happen a whole lot, they are micromanaging, meaning that they're doing everything. They're doing public relation, marketing, and it's practically impossible to be a genius at all of these things at the same time. So that literally set the stage to self-sabotage. When it comes to investing with companies, one of the things that we often look at is the corporate culture of the organization. We look at the organization chart, because from looking at the organization chart, it's going to now help you to understand your team dynamics. And if the team dynamic is not right, those businesses may not reach the pre-qualification criteria for funding, because knowledge and experience tells you that me, myself, and I is totally inadequate to build a viable project, a viable brand. It requires it has a lot of moving parts, and you need the right human resources, technical resources, and then the capital resources to move the vision forward.
And you know what, in your speaking, I'm just thinking to myself, there are a lot of businesses that don't structure themselves right. So even when they scale, right, and they grow, they don't have the right positioning to get funding, right? Because they didn't start it the right way. They don't have the right things in place, or they scale it, and when it comes time to wanting to sell that business, it's not set up the right way for them to even do that. Can you speak on those things?
But you're right. If you are building a business, a brand, to sell that brand, one of the most important things that you need is data. And for example, some of the data that you would need is the financial data, because person is going to make a decision to purchase your brand based on the fact that you're showing that the business has a healthy financial history. So that's one thing that they're going to be looking at. If you have data on your market, meaning that you can establish that this is your market size, and you are perhaps only servicing 10% of the market or 5% of the market, and the market has tremendous scalability, you are now able to put information to the potential buyer that, hey, they are buying a good business, a business that has the potential to grow. Other factors, which, sometimes there's flexibility here also. Having a strong team that understand the business can also be very helpful in helping an investor to make an investment decision with you. Because some investors, they may buy the brand, but they don't necessarily manage it. They may still work with your team to move those businesses process forward. But what has stand out a lot, and merger and acquisition is not necessarily my forte, but I have a number of colleagues who are in the field, and from what I know, you need to at least have your financial records right. And you need to understand your market. Those are two important things that you need to really understand. The other thing that I would want to add to that is having the expertise on your board that can really help you to make better, smarter business decision in terms of navigating that potential sale of your business.
And even starting up and making sure you have the right things in place to get the loans, to get the funding.
You see, the thing about, on the point of getting the funding, what is important to recognize, and this is why I said early on, having the right team players at your strategic and tactical level can play a very pivotal role. And let us talk a little bit about the finance here. There are many different pre-qualifications to access capital. For example, the pre-qualification for debt financing is different than the pre-qualification for equity financing. The pre-qualification for credit financing is different from the pre-qualification for equity capital. You find sometimes that the rising star in business just know that he or she needs access to capital, but not all capital is equal, and perhaps there's some capital financial instruments that you should stay away from. Now, one of the things that I would normally say to many rising stars in business, you don't want to take capital unless you understand your market. Because let's take, for example, you're taking debt instruments. In most cases, debt instruments, one of the pre-qualifications for debt is that you must have collateral. It's going to be a collateralized loan. If you don't have, let us say, a property, but your mom and dad, your uncle and aunt, they have a property and they trust you and they want to invest with you because they're alongside you with your emotional decision, and they put up that house to get access to capital, but you didn't do all your stress tests. But here the bank say, hey, my risk is minimized because I have an asset, and the asset, the debt that is taken is only 25% of the value of the asset. And if something goes wrong, I make 75% return on my investment. So perhaps debt instrument or debt financing may not be the best thing for you if you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
Because with debt instruments, you have monthly debt obligation. And if the business is not giving you sustainable cash flow, that is a problem, and a big problem. If something is to interrupt the cycle of cash flow, if you're not certain about cash flow, if you don't have guaranteed buyer, perhaps locked in for another year, 2 years, and something comes and disrupt the cash flow potential of that business, in a very short period of time, you can get a foreclosure letter. You can get a warning letter 1, 2, 3 times, and then you get your foreclosure letter, and the financial institution ready to, declare ownership. And that's not something that you want. So taking a debt is not a decision to take lightly. And this is why, again, I keep saying, do not make emotional decisions. You need data to make informed and educated business decisions. Some of the things that we would talk about in access to finance, access to capital, we tend to talk a lot about why not access credit capital. There's a right and wrong way to access capital, because in the US, what we see, and we work with a number of businesses, and you find that they leverage their FICO score to access capital that they're putting into the business.
Right.
Now, the mistake in doing that is that because the business is volatile in the startup, you're going to find that very often you may not be able to reach your monthly debt obligation with the financial institution. And when that happens, you get late payment, you get non-payment. And when you get non-payment too frequently, it becomes a derogatory on your credit report. Now, when you get a derogatory on your credit report, guess what? Nobody wants to do business with you now.
Right.
No financial institution wants to do business with you. Why? Because you use your FICO score. There's a smarter way in which you can do this, but you have to set up the business right. And setting up the business right is not only having the business set up with the Secretary of State. That is good. You're going to have your your LLC, S Corp or C Corp set up with the Secretary of State. That's a step in the right direction. You now need to go another step further. You need to get your business visible with Dun & Bradstreet, because when it is visible here, you're now able to create what you call your PAYDEX score. So remember, I talked earlier about the FICO score. The business is a legal entity. The business in of itself can have its own credit score. But because you don't know that you're using your personal credit score to do guarantee for the business, you can separate the two. When you set the business up properly, the business now has its identity. The business now can borrow against itself. And guess what happens here? Because the business is now borrowing against itself, it doesn't affect your credit score. If even you give a personal guarantee to the business, it doesn't affect your personal FICO score. On the business side now, several things happen. The possibility exists that you can get what we call non-secure line of credit, and you could get funding at 0% APR for 6, 12, or 24 months. 0% APR means that when you understand the market and you know what to do, you are now able to access business credit. And guess what? You have no annual percentage rate to pay on it, no interest to pay for 6 months, 12 months, or 24 months. So this is why I'm saying you need to understand this. So when you understand this, sometimes it's say, hey, why do I take debt when I have monthly debt obligation, and if something goes wrong, my family asset is risk? Why not take credit financing where I have 0% APR for 12 months, 1 year, or 24 months, 2 years, and it gives me some more flexibility in terms of how I'm dealing with this.
Wait, let me
Things
stop you.
that
Let me
go
stop you
ahead.
there. Let me stop you. I need to stop you because I need them to be able to know where they can reach you in order to get more information on this. If this is the only part that they listen to, I need them to know how they can reach you to get more information.
Okay, they can reach me across social media. I have a YouTube channel, LinkedIn, Facebook, and that is on LinkedIn. I have two channels, which is you can find me using my name, Gary Thompson. You can also find me using Habits and Money. That's HABITS, letter N, money. All right, you can find me across the various social media that way also. They can also reach me via the email, which is Global Capital Inc., Global Capital Ltd at gmail.com. And
All
of
right.
course, they have a telephone number that we will share at the end of the program.
All right. All right. So I'm going to let you go back. You were finishing up on the credit. Sorry.
One of the things that we often talk about is, as a rising star in business, it's important to have an accountant next to you. All right. They're going to tell you how much money is coming in, how much money is going out. They're going to try to ensure that you have a positive, healthy balance sheet. But one of the important people that you need alongside you also is a specialist that understand how financial market works. They will be able to say to you, okay, we can take a mix of debt and equity, and we have the option of also taking credit line. Going deeper into the financial world, I would say to people, some of the biggest companies in the world, they have trade lines, and you find that many rising stars in business might have never heard about trade line. When I talk about trade line, I'm talking about access to capital in the form of net 30, net 60, and net 90. So you're going to have, let us suppose that you want to open a supermarket, and you don't have the capital to set up your supermarket. You can build out relationship with major manufacturers. Just pull in your Paydex and your FICO, knowing that your business properly set up and so on. Guess what? You get what is known as a trade line. It's a business line of credit or a personal line of credit, where they're going to give you access to their entire product line at no money down. And you have that line of credit for 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days. Guess what else? You pay back that line of credit at the deadline, and you can wash and repeat that process several times. And I don't see any challenge with that, because guess what? You outfit your store with products that you use trade line to do so, and you have good customers that are coming in and they're paying, and they're paying you. You're making monies to offset cost of the net 30, 60, and 90, and you have your profit. So you could pay that, and you still have a profit, and you literally put no money into the startup of that business.
But here's the thing, right? What you're talking about, what you're speaking about now, isn't something most people know, right? The information isn't easily accessible because not many people are speaking about it. And that's where it's important for us to have these kind of conversations so entrepreneurs know, because really and truly this is important.
It is. And almost in many sectors of doing business, they have these kind of financial instruments that are set up. So again, this is another reason why I'm emphasizing, yes, you need to have the accountant, but when you have a financial expert either on your board or who is your consultant that is helping you to navigate these things, they're helping you to make so much more smarter decisions. And on the financial side, there's so much for us to talk about. One of the things that we put a lot of emphasis on as it relates to helping the business to be financial intelligence, there are four important concepts that needs to be understood. One is you need to understand financial instruments. So what I've talked about so far is understanding the financial instruments. The other aspect is understanding how to access, because you find sometimes you understand the instrument a little bit, you understand enough to know rock and roll, but then you don't know how to access. So you need to have someone on your side that understands this. The third element that we talk about, you need to understand how to leverage because many rising stars access capital, and instead of leveraging it as an asset, they leverage it as a liability. Again, because a lot of emotion gets in the way. A solid financial advisor will be able to help you to cut through those emotional, issues, and really help you to look at hard data and help you to make the decision based on the data. Because the last thing that you want to do is to take a debt and you leverage it as a liability. I see persons have stress and sleepless night. It's like when you don't have the money, you know that you want it, and something strange happens when you get the money. Everything that you wasn't there for you to do, you start to see that you want to do those things, and the real way to invest it is not being invested that way. So it quickly becomes a liability. You need to understand smart capital leverage.
Listen.
All right, you're thinking through, you're seeing through the entire process. And the last part here that I'm going to talk about is where we talk a lot about capital mitigation. One of the things that is said very often is that the cost for capital is high. And I would say to people, the cost for capital is high if you don't understand financial instrument. Because let us suppose you buy a debt and the debt is 6% APR per annum. And you're saying that 6% is too high. Well, guess what? When you recognize that the debt is comprised of the principal, the balance, and you know how to speak to the principal balance, guess what happens? Once you start to address your principal balance, you have massive ripple-down effect that is taking place on the interest, meaning that you, the borrower, when you understand financial instrument, when you understand how to navigate it, you, the borrower, you have control over the cost that you pay for capital. But of course, as you said, this is not common knowledge. But you, the borrower, sometimes you feel, I don't have any control. The financial institutions are taking advantage of me. No, they're not, because you have control over costs that you're paying for capital, but you need to understand what to do. And that's why by having the right financial expert on your team that can help you to think through all of this. I talked earlier about thinking ahead, seeing beyond problems, and being able to take informed action. But if you don't know all of this, you can't think ahead. You can't see beyond problems. You can't take informed action. So in cases like this, you need to have mentors, you need to have coach, you need to have a good sponsor and a supportive community behind your business to really push it forward.
Well, listen, on that note, I'm just going to wrap it up by saying everything that you have brought to light is things, they're things that we need to have brought to light, right? We need to know about marketing and sales. We need to know about analyzing the business, we need to learn about the finance of the business. There's so much to pack into just being an entrepreneur, that I don't think most entrepreneurs take into consideration, or people take into consideration when choosing to become an entrepreneur. And that is why, as you said, mentorship, coaching is imperative when going down the path or choosing the path. You need to have the right people on your team.
You're right.
You need to have the right people on your team. And I appreciate everything that you brought to the table today and we've discussed. And again, I want you to tell everyone how to reach you. The phone number we had spoken about before, the best way for them to get.
You can reach me at 332-235-1099. 332-235-1099. That is one of my direct lines. You could make direct contact with me. And if not, one of my assistants will definitely answer the phone, and we will be so happy to help you. So whether you want to start a business or scale a business, or you want to access capital, you're in the US, 50 states in the US, we are so happy to give you all the support that we can help you get you to grow and scale your brand. And I must say, thanks, Cassie, for having me here today. It has been such a pleasure working with you.
Likewise. I appreciate it, and I appreciate everything that you do. I appreciate everything you do for the community, and keep doing your work. All right.
Certainly. And you have a great day.
You too. Talk soon. All right.
All right. Bye-bye.